What we are doing for today is going into the details of how to work inside your, let's say, second best way of obtaining bronze. Because outside of your dailies, outside of your multiple alts completing those juicy dailies for your bronze caches, there is your raiding, your second best way of steady income of bronze, especially as Blizzard continues to nerf the open world grind spot of mobs. The raid is definitely still a very steady source of income of your bronze, and unlike the other versions of WoW, the ways in which you raid in Remix are a little bit weirder, because everything rotates around this thing right here, the Word of Salvation. So today we are going into exactly how does the word work, because whenever you enter a raid you will hear a bunch of comments from different players on, who should the word go to, how many players should be running the word, what should you do or cast or use whenever you want to use the word, etc, etc. Let's try to make it a little bit clearer on how you should be using this word whenever you are raiding. Starting, of course, from the very basic, simple premise of the item itself, which is that when you cast word on a player, you're gonna get an initial big heal on that player, and then for the following 10 seconds, all the healing the player will take will be stored as an absorb shield. And after 10 seconds, once the word ends, all of the absorb shield remaining on that target will explode for damage. So the first simple thing to say about this mechanic is, it might be a little bit boring, but the best way to make this word stronger is by upgrading your gear. And that's because, like most other gems, this gem as well scales with item level. So the default max item level before any upgrades, which is 346, has a base heal of 478,000 for the word. But for example, a word at 358 item level has a heal of 4 million health. A max item level 556 has a heal of 5.7 million. Now, you might be saying, but isn't the strong part of the word not the initial heal that you care about, but rather the absorb shield that you can after balloon out of control? That's true. However, there is a limit to this absorb shield, and that is 7 times the base heal. This means that the limit of a default 346 word is about 3.3 million total healing. Meanwhile, the limit of the heal of a 528 item level word is almost 30 million healing. That's why it's good to have it at max item level, not really because of the first initial heal, but because of all of the healing you can then store up in the shape of an absorb shield. So that is the first way to make your word as strong as possible, just very simply the item level. The second part to make it as strong as possible is to use it on the same player. That's because, very simply, if there are multiple words present on the same target, one word at a time will have its absorb healing, maxed out. However, the healing you're giving to the player will continue to be added to all of the other absorb shields from the word currently on the target. So basically, a single heal would work 10 times, would help you store up the word 10 times as well. So if you had 10 players using Word of Salvation on themselves, so one word per player, and then a paladin uses Lay on Hands on one of them, only that player will get the big heal from Lay on Hands, and the words of the other 9 players wouldn't do anything. But if you had 10 players dump the word on a single guy, then that Lay on Hands of the paladin will get massive value by having the healing count for multiple words. Not only that, but as we mentioned, the word also has initial healing. So the first word will not heal anything, but the second word you cast on the same player will have the instant healing to help fill up the healing requirement of the first word. And then you land the third word on the same target, and that will have the healing between the first and the second word. And then the fourth word cast on the same target will have that healing spread on the first, second, and third word. And then the fifth one, and sixth one, and seventh one, etc, etc. So casting it on the same target is beneficial for these reasons. once the max healing is completely drained out of the first ward, then the remaining healing will start spilling over the second ward, and then the third and fourth and fifth and sixth, etc, etc. Now, another thing you might be hearing about this ward strat is what works and what doesn't, especially after Blizzard landed a hotfix a few days ago where certain passives or certain masteries, for example, of certain specs no longer boosted the total healing of the ward. Like, for example, a Holy Priest's mastery, the Echo of Light Hot, not counting towards the damage of the ward. But there are others that still work. For example, one of the better ones being Guardian Spirit of a Holy Priest. The 60% increased healing from Guardian Spirit still works. This is the same ward used on the same target twice, once without Guardian Spirit and then once with Guardian Spirit, and the healing is effectively about 60% stronger with the ward. Same goes towards another couple of passives considered to be nerfed or not working anymore. It actually still does work. The passive of Brewmaster Monks to receive more healing based on your crit, and the Mastery passive of receiving more healing from a Guardian Druid also still work on the ward, making them still very good targets to receive the ward on them. Now, as far as damage goes and how to maximize the damage of the ward, something weird has been going on, as players quickly discovered with the other meta gem Lifestorm. At the moment, the healing of Lifestorm seems to be double dipping with the Word of Salvation, meaning that, for example, you can land a 13-something million healing Lifestorm and somehow the ward is going to hit for twice as much as that amount of healing from your Lifestorm. However, that is what players have discovered as being also very good. Not to have the entire raid run with Word of Salvation, but to also have some players also run with Lifestorm. Now, initially and normally, Lifestorm would spawn 3 different circles with a bunch of base healing attached to it, as well as damage. And much like the Word of Salvation, this healing from the Lifestorm is going to be scaling based on the item level. Here is, for example, a Lifestorm at base item level being upgraded to max item level, having 4.6 million healing for every one of these flowers you can stand into. And because the very important thing of Lifestorm is to be inside the flowers, importantly, the guy with the ward wants to stay inside the flowers to gain the healing of this Lifestorm, many groups will organize by pulling the boss or dragging the boss towards a corner to make sure that you can then use Lifestorm inside the corner where most of the flowers will then clump up. And because they are clumped up like this, the guy with the ward can easily stand inside multiple of them. And then you see the healing in here, all being clumped up on the same player. I got hit by all 3 of them. Now imagine if there is 3, 4, or 5 players using Lifestorm, all in the corner, and then the guy with the ward stands in them. It's a massive amount of healing. This is particularly strong for specs who cannot heal normally. It's one thing for the priest, for the Holy Priest to use Ward, because the Holy Priest has Guardian Spirit, it has Holy Ward Serenity, a whole bunch of very powerful single target heals that can spam on the guy with Ward. Same goes for Holy Paladin with Lay on Hands and a bunch of other single target healing, etc, etc. But for example, what would a Havoc Demon Hunter do with a Ward? How am I gonna be healing the Ward target, right? Or a Hunter, or a Warlock, or a Mage, or a Rogue? For these type of specs, pure DPS specs, it's better overall to just use Lifestorm, because that's a simple way for you to do tons of healing even as a DPS without the ability to heal the target with the ward. And again, as mentioned, the item level of your, in this case, helmet, since it's a meta gem, is what is going to matter for making your Lifestorm heal for more. It's not just a meta gem, though, that you can min-max. So imagine you have a group of 10 players, the good split would be something like 6 players with the ward and 4 players with Lifestorm, or 5 and 5. What's also good are a couple of other gems, in this case Vindication and Searing Light, depending again on whether or not you are healing or doing damage. In the case of healers, the good pick is Searing Light. That's because Searing Light stores 7% of your healing. and after 3 seconds, Searing Light is consumed to heal your ally and then inflict damage to all enemies within 12 yards. This helps, of course, healers that can heal store even more healing on the target with the ward. However, this is kind of useless for DPS players. Even if you are using Lifestorm as a DPS and storing some of the healing would work with Searing Light, is not nearly as strong as a normal healer. What is better for a DPS is to use Vindication. 10% of your damage is collected as Vindication, and every 3 seconds Vindication is consumed to heal up to 3 allies within 50 yards. This is gonna proc every 3 seconds. Your ward lasts for 10 seconds, which means you're gonna have multiple applications, up to 3 different applications, 4 different applications of Vindication healing as a DPS that cannot normally heal. This is, for example, a good result of a Vindication on a single player hitting for over 100 million in terms of damage done because of the healing you stored as a DPS. Now, pairing together both the Lifestorm and the Vindication to do massive healing is going to work very well, even on specs without many ways to be healing. You see here, for example, this is a run where a DK, a Warrior, a Hunter, so, pure DPS specs, are able to do 1 billion total damage from their gems. Without having the normal ability to heal, so the normal ability to store up healing with the Word of Salvation, they were still able to. So, to recap, the general playstyle whenever you enter a raid is to have roughly 60 or so % of your raid to run Ward. So, as I mentioned, something like a 6-to-4 splits. 6 players with wards, 4 players with Lifestorm. Pick up your best DPS, your highest item level DPS to put on the Lifestorm on them, and the rest plays with ward. Have ideally every player, but especially every DPS player, run with Vindication, and then especially healers can also be running with Searing Light for extra damage. You can decide on your ward target. This is another one that has been talked about a lot, on who should be getting the ward. As mentioned, generally it doesn't matter too much, but if you want to min-max, as mentioned, picking some targets that can benefit from some free self-healing, it would be pretty good. As mentioned, Brewmaster Monks can receive more self-healing, and it currently still works with the ward. Guardian Druid's Mastery still works on them. Blood DKs can use Vampiric Touch to receive 30% more healing. That also works. On top of that, they also are Blood DKs, so they can self-heal themselves. So those are pretty good targets for your ward. If you are a raid leader, you can be the one to, tell your sheep in your raid where to go before a boss is spawned. Hey, we are going here on pool because we want our Lifestorm to spawn very close to each other to get the ward to stack up, right? You can do that as well. Have a pool timer. You can start applying your healing buffs before the pool, but in theory it's better to wait after wards are applied. When the pool timer hits 0, everyone should be tagging the boss. You have heard this type of thing multiple times on whether or not you should ward before the pool or after the pool. The idea is that if you ward before tagging the boss, your ward might get drained immediately by other wards. So faster than you can even do anything else, which will cause your ward to just explode immediately, doing 0 damage. So just not to risk it. It might still work to ward before the pool, but just no reason not to just wait to tag the boss and then ward afterwards. As soon as you pull and the wards are being used and all of the players are using the Lifestorm, you can wait before Lifestorms do their healing. It takes 3 seconds after you cast Lifestorm to actually have the flowers do the healing. So after the flowers bloom, to get the healing done, you can start healing as well to completely fill the absorb requirements of the ward. And then 10 seconds later, the boss should just die very, very quickly. That is the general idea on how to make wards maximize their damage. As mentioned, not perhaps at this point really that necessary when it comes to certainly LFR difficulty, but also normal mode. It's, easy enough, and bosses don't have nearly as much HP that you can make it work even without min-maxing to this extent. But if you want to speed up your process, especially in the heroic version of the raids, where perhaps more players are starting to get into now, as perhaps they have also started upgrading their gear, getting higher item level and trying to get into heroic. This is the generally, min-maxed, try-hard way on how to maximize the damage with your Word of Salvation, and also trying to give a bit of a tip for everyone as to how and what Word of Salvation even does and how it works in the raid. So, with this out of the way, we are now done with explaining how raids are being run in Mr. Pandaria Remix right now. Hoping that some of you have now finally understood why so many groups ask for having words and knowing what word does. Hopefully now you have a clear idea on what this gem is supposed to be doing. So, with this out of the way on this Tuesday, we are now leaving each other. We're starting as usual the goodbyes by thanking all of the Patreon supporters for the contribution and the help to the growth of the channel, which can, as usual, of course, still be given completely for free. You can like and comment down below, as well as subscribe to the channel itself. Now, with these pointless things out of the way, thank you guys again for watching. See you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime... No, I'm still gonna be leeching. I'm not upgrading any one of my gear. My bronze stays in my bags until the end of this event.